Welcome. Some breakfast bits again. So, we have a new Parsha. It's Sunday. Wanted to get into beshalach, and I found this really interesting thing. It deals with something that actually I've been dealing with a lot. There's a lot of Messianics who mock the authority of the sages, and they mock this idea that the sages are able to determine what is Torah here on earth and what is not. And I wanted to address that. And I actually think that most of their belief, in fact, most of Christian belief, for that matter, is actually founded upon this very rabbinic idea. It's sort of a little bit, takes you back a little bit, because you think, wait, there's all these Christians mocking this when it comes to the sages, but their whole entire belief system is based upon this very same idea. And it comes up in this week's Parsha. So I'm now reading from the Kli Yakar. So the Kli Yakar brings this up, and he brings this up on chapter 15, verse 2. And he says this: God is my strength and song, and he has become my salvation. Okay? In these verses, the Torah teaches the righteous turn the attribute of justice into mercy, and the wicked turn the attribute of mercy into justice. That is why it says, Ozi, my strength, meaning Az zeh, this strength, referring to the power and strength of the attribute of justice, as is written, Hashem be'ezacha yisamach melech, God in your strength the king rejoices. The righteous rejoice even in the attribute of justice, which is called Az, because the righteous find joy in fulfilling God's laws, which are true. And in your salvation, which refers to the attribute of mercy, how great is this, is the Tzadik's exaltation, right? So the Tzaddik is able to transfer that which is deemed for judgment into mercy. The wicked takes that which is even deemed for righteousness and turns it into wickedness, turns it into judgment. So there's a few places in the Talmud that come up, and one of the most famous ones is the story of the oven with Rabbi Eliezer and the Hakamim. And most Christians will mock this idea that the Hakamim are able to overrule God, because at the end of it, it says, well, God laughs, and he rules with Rabbi Eliezer, but the Hakamim determine that's not what halakha is. And the Christians will laugh at this idea. But that very idea is the same idea found here in the Kli Yakar, that the righteous are able to turn judgment into mercy. This whole idea of somebody else taking judgment that is meant for you, right? Because you sin, there is judgment that is meant for you. The righteous is able to take that judgment and turn it into mercy from God's right hand. Okay? This is the same line as applied is used in Bava Batza 59b, where it talks about the oven of Acne, and where, yes, the heavenly court rules with Rabbi Eliezer that the oven is tahor, and the sages rule that it is impure, and therefore the sages are right, and they overrule even God's ruling, the ruling in the upper Gan Eden. Okay? We find a similar situation of this when it comes to Hagiga 15b, where we find that Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai atone for the sins of Acher. They go and they rescue Acher from Gehenna. Right in Gehenna, his grave, he was never allowed to go to judgment because it was seen that his sins were so great because he was such a man of Torah. And so Rabbi Meir, his student and later his rabbi, and then his student again, he decided to go down and rescue him and to request of heaven that the judgment against him be overturned. And it began smoking from his grave. And so Rabbi Yochanan said, this is not a good thing. And so Rabbi Yochanan goes in and brings him to the world to come, meaning brings him to a place of restitution with Hashem, a place of goodness. And all these ideas are all along the same lines. So if you reject the sages, you reject this idea of, in Bava Metzia 59b, that the sages can overrule God and turn God's judgment into mercy, you also overrule the entire foundation for your Christian faith. Without accepting the sages, there's no place in Torah and Tanakh that you come up with this, like in written Torah, where you come up with this idea that the sages or a righteous person can overrule a judgment given by God upon a sinner. You only have that in Hagigah 15b and Bava Betzia 59b, where it gives authority to the sages to rule the Torah. This is brought up here in Kliaker. I encourage my Christian friends to remember this. The very thing that you are relying upon for your own salvation is that Yeshua is taking your judgment and turning it into mercy and judging it with mercy. That idea, by itself, at its root, does not come from the written Torah. It comes from the oral Torah. It comes from Bava Betzia 59b, that thing that you very mock about the authority of the sages. And in Hagigah 15b, the very thing that you mock of the authority of the sages to overrule judgments given by God is brought here. We see this at the sea, where it is Hashem, the name that is given for mercy, which judges the Egyptians and also gives mercy to the Jewish people.